Tonight, homeless and left waiting. A record number of Scottish families are being forced into temporary homeless accommodation.
With energy cost increases, people worried about debt that they're getting into as a result of that. Not only keeping up with rent, but keeping up with mortgage payments. And we just feel that we're going to see a tsunami of homelessness coming out of this.
Some are even being asked to move hundreds of miles away. Also making the headlines, a potential pay deal for council workers. As cleansing staff strike, an increased offer is to be made of 5%.
£12, £11, at £10 a pair, well, it's superb.
Bargains, banter and bric-a-brac, marking the history of the Barras.
I love all these people. No, look, I will speak.
And fringe politics. We meet the satirists sending up the politicians at the festival. I'm Emma Cameron in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. A record number of families in Scotland, including more than 8,000 children, have been forced into temporary homeless accommodation in the past year. And some are being sent hundreds of miles away because local councils don't have the resources to support them.
This week, a family from Edinburgh were told there was no suitable housing for them, so they were sent to Newcastle. Charities are expecting the crisis to deepen as winter approaches and the cost of living increases. Kay Nicholson has the story.
People from all over the world are staying in Edinburgh this month, soaking up the festival atmosphere. Meanwhile, some locals are struggling to keep a roof over their heads. The latest homelessness figures paint a sobering picture.
So we've seen a 3% increase in homelessness. We've seen an incredibly shocking 17% increase in the number of kids in temporary accommodation. That figure has never been higher. That's only figures up to the end of March. That doesn't take account of people now really struggling with energy cost increases, people worried about debt that they're getting into as a result of that. Not only keeping up with rent, but keeping up with mortgage payments. And we just feel that we're going to see a tsunami of homelessness.
There's also been a rise in the number of those being evicted from private tenancies. Councils have a legal duty to help someone find emergency housing. But in the past year, almost 700 households weren't even offered temporary accommodation. The vast majority of those were here in Edinburgh, laying bare the wider housing struggles this city is facing. This man is just one example. He was turned away, so Charity Steps to Hope checked him into a hotel for the night, and it's now offering ongoing support.
Well, we know that Edinburgh is one of the authorities that struggles the most because of the difficulties within the housing market more generally. Between Edinburgh and Glasgow, they account for a large proportion of those in temporary accommodation. So we need to support those local authorities to do more to move families into settled accommodation.
Earlier this week, a guide was published highlighting ways to prevent homelessness in the first place. And there are plans to expand Housing First, a support scheme which has been a huge success in Finland.
Many people, they want to live in these Housing First units that we, for example, have anywhere between 20 to 100 apartments in the same building. And people like to live there because there is, friends, there is this community aspect, and the support is always available 24/7 downstairs. I think that is something to take under consideration in other countries as well.
Campaigners agree that urgent solutions need to be found before winter. Kay Nicholson, STV News, Edinburgh.
Council leaders have agreed to increase a pay offer to workers to 5%. Cleansing workers in Edinburgh walked out yesterday, and already rubbish is piling up on the city's streets. Well, live now to our political editor, Colin Mackay, who's been following negotiations. Colin, is this a breakthrough?
Well, it's certainly movement, but I'm not sure we're quite at the breakthrough stage yet. As you say, the cleansing workers in Edinburgh walked out yesterday, first of almost 2 weeks' worth of strikes, and it's already starting to affect flats in the city centre. I walked down the Royal Mile earlier on. It was heaving with tourists. The bins were heaving as well. So it's already starting to overflow from the bins around Edinburgh and spread around the streets. But given that strike action is set to escalate over the next few weeks and spread right across Scotland, spread to other sectors as well, possibly closing schools, the council leaders really had to act. So they're offering staff 5%, and that could be changed slightly and it could become a flat rate. That would equate to about £1,400, which is slightly more than 5% for the poorest workers. Unions will consider this next week, but in the meantime, the strikes go on.
OK, Colin, many thanks for that.
The two men who died in the blaze at the Cameron House Hotel had cuts in their hands from trying to smash their way out of a window. A pathologist told a fatal accident inquiry it was likely the injuries were sustained as the couple attempted to flee the inferno.
Firefighters have also been describing the worsening conditions inside the hotel when they found the bodies of Richard Dyson and Simon Midgley on a stairwell. Our chief reporter Sharon Frew was in court.
This inquiry has already heard the two men who lost their lives in this fire were found in a stairwell above their first floor room. Nearby was a large picture frame that appeared to have been used to break the inside pane of a double glazed window. Pathologist Dr Julie McAdam confirmed Richard Dyson and Simon Midgley died from the inhalation of smoke and fire gases. Both men were found clothed, stained with soot, and had a number of superficial cuts to their hands, consistent with making an effort to smash glass. The first 999 call about a fire at Cameron House was received at 6:42 a.m. At 8:16, almost an hour and a half later, it was confirmed 2 people from room 8 were still missing. Firefighters searching the upper floor at this time told the inquiry the blaze was well developed. One described kicking in the door of room 8 after finding it was locked. No one was inside. In the images of the suite shown to the inquiry, the couple's personal belongings can be seen next to an unmade bed. On the bedside table, an electronic key card, which would have been used to open the door.
Firefighter Philip Douglas was part of a crew wearing breathing apparatus sent to the stairwell on the first floor. The firefighter told the inquiry he was sweeping the grounds with his foot to check the integrity of the floor, and when he reached the top of the stairs, he thought he had kicked a piece of debris. He then realised it was a person. The man, later identified as Richard Dyson, was unresponsive. Due to the conditions, it took 4 firefighters to remove him from the building.
Another firefighter described how minutes later he found Simon Midgley directly behind a door on the top landing. There were no signs of life. Simon's mother and other family members have sat through every day of this inquiry so far. It will continue on Monday. Sharon Frew, STV News.
Another member of the so-called ISIS Beatles, the terror group who killed Scots aid worker David Haines, has been sentenced to life in a US jail. 34-year-old El Shafi El Sheikh was convicted in April of hostage-taking, conspiracy to murder US citizens and supporting a terrorist organisation.
The judge described the Sudanese-born Londoner as barbaric, brutal and criminal, whose actions resulted in the deaths of 4 US hostages. ITN's Robert Moore was at the court in Alexandria, Virginia.
Well, of course, David Haines was one of the victims of El Sheikh and his others in that gang of murderous ISIS killers. The humanitarian from Perthshire was first seized by the so-called Islamic State in March 2013, and he was killed, murdered, executed in the most savage fashion just over a year later in September 2014. And sadly, the body of the man from Perth has never been found, although there are attempts still to locate his remains. His daughter Bethany was not here today, but she was here back in April for the conviction of El Sheikh, and she has been in the months since then a powerful and remarkable advocate for her father. Justice was done here today in the eyes of other members of the families of the victims who gave witness statements, among them Diane Foley, the mother of James Foley, who was also killed by El Sheikh and the other members of the gang. Diane Foley said that what this really shows today is that American justice will be delivered to international terrorists wherever they attempt to hide. The judge was absolutely excoriating about the character of El Sheikh. He described the defendant's behaviour as horrific, barbaric, callous and brutal, said that Britain had no part to play, that he wasn't brutalised by the UK, but rather it came from somewhere else. We have to hope that the family and friends of David Haines now find some kind of justice in what happened here today, in the fact that the conviction and sentencing of El Sheikh has been done. Certainly other family members here have a sense of deep relief, while saying that their grief will never end.
Robert Moore in the US. Glasgow's museums have agreed to become the first in the UK to repatriate stolen items to India. The charity which manages the city's collections has signed a deal to transfer 7 objects dating back hundreds of years.
A transfer of ownership ceremony was held this morning after the City Council approved a recommendation to return more than 50 items to India, Nigeria and the United States, as our political correspondent Ewan Petrie reports.
This ceremonial sword once belonged to a prince in India. It was stolen by a member of his staff and later sold by his Prime Minister to a British general, whose nephew then gifted it to Glasgow. Glasgow Life Museums has signed an agreement to transfer it and 6 other items back to India.
This moment is probably one of the high points of my professional life, and I'm on cloud 9. There's emotion attached with all these artifacts due to the cultural significance, the heritage, and when they go back, it really is a joyful time, joyful moment.
As more is discovered about the origin of objects held here, repatriation is seen as a starting point in addressing historic wrongs and building connections with other nations.
An honest understanding of Britain and Scotland's history and our relationships with the world, and of course that's something that the people of Scotland are very interested in. They want to be provided with the facts to arrive at an informed opinion, and repatriation and the discussion and representation of that is an important part of that process.
This is one of the items due to be returned to India. It's a shrine dating back to the 10th century. It was stolen by a Scottish rail engineer more than 100 years ago. He had it transported back to Scotland.
This is loot. We shouldn't really be associated with stolen goods. I mean, we're basically fencing stolen goods and have been for a long time. They were gifted to Glasgow Museums, but not by the original owners. The thieves actually gave them to us. So, we shouldn't have them, and it's really time that we sent them back.
Glasgow has led repatriation efforts in the UK since 1998, when the city agreed to return an item to descendants of a massacre in South Dakota. 2 further projects will see more items returned to the United States and Nigeria. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
Sir Alex Ferguson has told a court he never saw Ryan Giggs lose his temper as he gave evidence defending his ex-player. The former Manchester United manager spoke about his relationship at the club with Giggs, who's on trial charged with assaulting his ex-girlfriend Kate Greville.
Sir Alex told Manchester Crown Court that Giggs had a fantastic temperament and that everyone looked at Ryan Giggs as the number 1. Granada Television's Elaine Wilcox reports from a dramatic day at Manchester Crown Court.
A smiling Sir Alex Ferguson said he first met Ryan Giggs when he was 13 and he was training with Manchester City. He said it was his job to persuade him to join Man United, which he did when he was 14. He said he was a quiet boy and he told his mum he would look after him. At 17, he said he was already being compared as the next George Best. He was getting so much attention, he said he would look after all the media requests. Now, Sir Alex Ferguson, who's 80, who's known for his hairdryer treatment of former players, was asked what was Ryan Giggs' temperament like. He said it was fantastic. He said, when I lost my temper about a performance, I would use Ryan Giggs as an example. Sometimes he got the sharp end of my tongue, but he was strong enough and could take it. Everyone else would think if Ryan Giggs can take it, I can take it. He said to have a career like he did in a difficult position, he had to have a good temperament. He said he was the best example I had in the club. Everyone looked at Ryan Giggs as the number 1. Now, Sir Alex Ferguson was in the court for just 10 minutes. He didn't look at Ryan Giggs in the dock once before he left. Earlier, the jury was read what was described as Kate Grebel's final goodbye letter to him. She said he was a compulsive liar and a serial cheat, and she listed details of his alleged affairs with 8 other women, including messages about threesomes, and claimed he was seeing a woman who was married to a cricketer. She accused Ryan Giggs of being arrogant and showing no respect towards her throughout their 6-year relationship. Now, Ryan Giggs has admitted he hasn't been faithful to any of his previous partners, including his wife, but he insists he's never been violent or controlling. This trial will continue next week.
Elaine Wilcox reporting. Now, the Barras is known for its colourful characters and classic patter. That's exactly what's being celebrated to mark the centenary of the Glasgow market. The favourite catchphrases used by traders over the years have been engraved into the streets, as Caroline Lewis reports.
£12, £11, at £10 a pair, well, it's superb.
From towels to a tiger's head. Whatever you needed, the Barras was the best place in town to bag a bargain. And one that holds fond memories for many Glaswegians.
It didn't matter what the weather was, Barras was always really busy. A really social community. Christmas was always stowed. You couldn't move, it was moving through the crowd like a snake.
You could buy anything here. You could buy meat, furniture, everything, you name it, they'd be selling it all along here.
Hurry now, £1 a gallon.
Fellas doing like 2 pillows and 2 sheets and 2 whatever for a £5 and sold, all the hands up and everything.
£6.95 for a whole lot.
But it wasn't the wares that made the Barras iconic. It was its distinct character, and in particular the witty banter and catchphrases of the sellers. In its heyday, they were the heart of the market, and now they're being given a permanent tribute to make sure they stay part of the Barras for many years to come. Traders have been sharing their stories of days gone by and the sayings that were well known around the market.
One of the phrases that was the native of the project was "Get your lucky knickers," which was shouted by Josie Lucky Knickers, trying to attract people to her knicker stall. I think everybody in Glasgow has a Barras story. Everyone loves the market, and the reason they love the market is because the incredible people with their amazing banter. You never know people like that anywhere else in the world that are here in the Barras. And we want to immortalise these phrases and that patter.
Today, you may not be able to get everything from a needle to an anchor at the market, but the memories of the bustling Barras won't be forgotten. Caroline Lewis, STV News.
Go on, cheap. One sports reporter.
Waiting for it, as always.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Cheap shot, more like. Celtic are close to securing a deal for Rubin Kazan winger Sead Haksabanovic. As talks continue, the Parkhead club are hopeful the Montenegrin international will become their 7th summer signing. Here's Ronnie Charters.
Ange Postecoglou put his squad through their paces at Lennoxtown today, with the visit of Hearts to come on Sunday. But could the squad soon be joined by this man, Sead Haksabanovic? The club are progressing in talks with the Montenegrin winger over a move to Parkhead. When asked, the Celtic manager wouldn't be drawn on Haksabanovic, but admits he wants players who are versatile.
If we can get a player who can play in a variety of positions, it's just got to be the ideal player. Our recruiting this year has been around making our squad stronger and more robust compared to sort of last year. And if you look at the players we've brought in, that's what they've added to our squad.
Over at Ibrox, Rangers travel to the capital to face Hibs, looking to maintain their 100% record. In their last league outing, it was a convincing 4-0 win over St Johnstone. In North Lanarkshire, Motherwell are hopeful of signing former Scotland international Robert Snodgrass. The club have held talks with the 34-year-old ahead of their match against Livingston tomorrow.
I know him personally. I think he would enjoy his football here, the way we want to do things, and the environment that we're creating, the culture and stuff like that. He'll fit into what we're trying to achieve. So as I said, we'll see how that goes.
In Paisley, St Mirren have re-signed Alex Gogic on a 2-year deal. Ahead of their trip to face Dundee United, last week's goal hero Richard Tate is eyeing back-to-back wins.
If we start on the front foot and take it to them, it could be a good start for us. So, I think as horrible as it sounds, we probably just want to go there and stick the knife in a little bit more and then leave with 3 points and get away from there. So it'll be a tough game, like I say, but there's no reason why we can't go there and get points.
And Kilmarnock boss Derek McInnes is looking forward to coming up against old friend Malky Mackay when they make the journey to Dingwall to face Ross County.
Malky's somebody I've known through my career, and we did our pro licence together, we did our pro licence club visit to Sampdoria together and spent some time in Italy doing that. So, you know, somebody who I'm glad to see him back in the game doing what he does best as a manager.
This is the full Premiership fixture card this weekend. 5 matches on Saturday, kicking off with Hibs against Rangers at 12:30 before Celtic take on Hearts on Sunday at 3 o'clock. Ronnie Charters, STV News.
That's all the sport for me tonight, folks.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Now Sean has the weather forecast.
The outlook for the day is calm and settled. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
We've still got 1 or 2 showers out there just now, predominantly across South Lanarkshire and also Lochaber and Mull, and most of those showers easing away over the next couple of hours, and then a lot of dry weather with clear spells to start tonight, but by the end of the night turning a little bit wilder in the west, stronger winds developing and some heavy rain coming into the Hebrides by about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Then tomorrow morning, well, it's not looking very pretty. Quite an autumnal start to the day, strong and gusty winds, perhaps gusting up to about 30-35 miles per hour in exposed parts of the west coast and also across the Hebrides. Not overly strong, but it's still not great for August. Wet and windy start to the day, but turning a lot better later on in the morning. Lots of lovely sunshine developing central and southern parts, but we'll hang on to showers in the northwest. Let's take a closer look at what's in store for you tomorrow afternoon. So the middle of the afternoon, it is looking much better. However, Col, Tiree, around the Lochaber area, Mull, Jura and Isla, we're going to have a brisk old breeze. And look at our temperatures. Well, when you think about last week, the fact we were 25, 28 degrees, this is well down on last week. So it is going to feel quite fresh, and there'll be some scattered showers here. But as we head further south into Dumbartonshire, Renfrewshire, Inverclyde, Lanarkshire and Ayrshire, a lot of dry and sunny weather. Once we've got that rain out of the way, 9-10 o'clock tomorrow morning, those gusty winds. Quieter on Sunday, a lot of dry and bright weather and lighter winds.
TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
And finally this evening, politics always plays a huge role at Edinburgh's Fringe Festival, and this year is no exception, with an abundance of shows poking fun at politicians and oozing satire.
Our political reporter Laura Alderman is outside a Fringe venue for us tonight and joins us now. And Laura, there's still a huge appetite for political performances in the Fringe.
Yeah, absolutely, John. In terms of political goings-on, it's given comedians and playwrights so much material to work with this year. Of course, at the minute, we've got the Conservative Party hustings, the leadership race is on to replace this guy behind me, who we'll hear from in just a moment. But first of all, we'll be taking a look at what's on offer, politics-wise, at the Fringe.
Couldn't be our size survive on its own.
Are we not just the same size as Norway, though, Dad?
A familiar debate brought to life on stage. The cast of Independence takes audiences back to the 2014 referendum and asks if there should be another one.
Because it's interactive, that depends on the audience. So they get a choice. They can either say, yes, it's going to happen, or no, it's going to happen. Because Nicola Sturgeon came in late for theatre world, with the decision to hold the referendum, I don't think there was an awful lot written. I think next year you'll find a whole raft of productions coming out for it, but this year there's very few.
Political events have always heavily influenced acts at the Fringe. Politicians themselves are no stranger to ridicule, but the events of the last few years have no doubt given the artistic community plenty of material to work with.
You're part of the fake news media, you're bad people, and TSV, whatever you call yourself, TSB, you should be ashamed of what you're doing here.
Comedian Matt Ford's Fringe show pokes plentiful fun at leading politicians, with some impressions thrown in too.
Since 2014, there's been just a growing desire to see political comedy and so much more raw material to work with. So I'm very grateful to the Tories, to the SNP and to the Labour Party for effectively writing the show for me.
Do you think it's a sort of a golden moment for political satire at the minute?
100%. And I think sometimes people presume the opposite. They say that politics has become so ludicrous and so ridiculous that it must be so hard. But I've always felt it's the opposite, that people are way more tuned in. They want to see these people satirised. They want to hear comedy about the people they vote for as well. And that's the other thing, is that it's not just that people laugh at their opponents. They are capable of laughing at politicians they vote for. And I think that is, however dark things get, that is a hugely reassuring thing that we have.
I work in the city. I've just become the Prime Minister.
Bloody Difficult Women reenacts the post-Brexit battles between Theresa May and Gina Miller, who took the government to court twice and won both times.
People have been saying, schools are coming along saying this should be on the curriculum, because actually it teaches people to understand what was actually a very, very dry, dull thing at the time. You can understand what's going on in history and what is continuing to go on in history.
Well, we don't get to meet, actually, until the final scene, but no, we're on opposite sides of the fence, and there's not a lot of love lost between us.
In recent years, it sometimes feels like the line between reality and comedy has become blurred. So there may be nothing else for it but to laugh. And with that in mind, there's plenty of shows to choose from.
And I'm pleased to say that the outgoing Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, joins us now. Boris, you've been lampooned quite a lot in the Fringe this year. What do you make of that?
Well, lampooning me is absolutely just not on. I'm a human being. If you prick me, do I not play? What channel is this, by the way?
It's STV News.
STD? Right, fantastic. Welcome, STD viewers. Fantastic.
You've not got very long left in Downing Street. Do you have any regrets about your time there?
I have regrets that I trusted people who have stabbed me in the front, in the back, at the side. I'm like a colander underneath my clothes. Laura, is it Laura?
Yes, it is, yeah.
You're very nice for a Scottish woman, I must say. Fantastic.
I feel like this is going in a strange direction. Well, let me ask you.
Ask me anything you want. I'm here, no ifs, no buts. Oven ready for your questions. Let's do this, Laura.
Who do you think should replace you, or would you yourself make a comeback?
Liz can keep the seat for me warm before I come. It is not over, ladies and gentlemen, SNP extremists. I am coming back. Absolutely. But I would like to say, just as we're up here in Scotland, that why does Nicola Sturgeon want to leave a progressive, wealth-creating union of countries merely to further their own political ambition?
I think we're going to have to leave it there, Boris. Thank you so much for joining us.
Ready for a drink?
And so there you have it, all the weird and wonderful things on offer this year at the Fringe.
You're a brave woman, Laura. We'll have lots more comedy from the Fringe and What's on Scotland at 7 o'clock. Join us then.
From all of us here, thank you for watching. Having a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.